Yo, what's up guys, and welcome back to a new video. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about Season 4 Dragonflight. Now, with the release of 10.2.6, we are getting very close to that Season 4 start. And with that, we have seen some tuning changes, we have seen the release of which tier sets are going to be used on which classes, and we've seen some mild tuning around trinkets and also the dungeons. Now, there is one thing, however, that I am kind of anxious for whenever I have seen all this class tuning, and that is the development of a new Exodia comp. As most of you guys remember, back in Season 2, we had one particular comp that dominated Season 2 so much that it was pretty much unplayable to play anything else besides these 5 classes. Now, obviously, Blizzard has taken notice of all these things happening, and they have nerfed Shadow Priest, for example, along the way. They have nerfed Holy Paladins, Guardian Druids, Augmentation Evokers, and the only class that kind of got out of it unscathed was Fire Mage, with only very minor tuning changes. Now, there is one thing, however, that I wanted to get into here. Because of the nerfs to Guardian Druid, I do not see them making that same return as they would in Season 2. But we have seen some changes being made to Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now, with the changes to Vengeance Demon Hunter, we have seen an enormous rise in Vengeance Demon Hunters being played in our M+ keys. The reason for this is because their utility at the moment is so strong, combining that with the survivability that they have and the damage output that they have makes them a top pick for tank. The issue that we currently see around Vengeance Demon Hunters is that they are able to control packs for such a long amount of time that nobody really has to press their stops or kicks because the pack is already dead before it even gets to that point. Vengeance Demon Hunters, however, are going to receive this exact same tier set as they do in this season, and no changes will be made to how their sigils currently work. So we will see the exact same thing happening in the next season. Besides that, they also provide the group with a 5% magical buff. Combining this with a Shadow Priest and, for example, a Fire Mage will just cause them to do even more damage. Now, talking about Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest has received a large amount of nerfs in the past, and they have pretty much had them all reverted at this point. And this is where it gets a little bit iffy, because if we scroll down here in the tuning changes, we can even see that they are getting buffed on their most overpowered tiers that they have had so far. Besides the fact that they have all their changes reverted, they are now also getting buffed, meaning that they will even further dominate that meta spot that they already had back in Season 2. We already see a rise of Shadow Priests being played right now in higher M+ in the current season, and I think this is very, very troublesome for the next season ahead. We can see that the damage of Mind Blast when Shadowy Insight triggers was 30%, but it will now be buffed to 40%. This might not seem like a huge buff, but if you look at it objectively, it's a 25% flat buff on Mind Blast proccing from the tier set. For their 4 set, it increases their Devouring Plague damage by 18% instead of 15%, which is once again a 20% buff on that Devouring Plague damage. And lastly, causes every forecast of Devouring Plague to increase Shadowy Apparition damage by 100% for 10 seconds instead of 80%. Once again, a 25% buff. Now, all of these buffs, combining that with all of their past nerfs being reverted and them getting their strongest tier set of the expansion back, will pretty much guarantee them a place in the meta. Now, if you combine this also with the 5% damage buff that they're already getting from Vengeance Demon Hunter, they will just become even stronger. Now that we've talked a little bit about Shadow Priest, I wanted to move on a little bit towards Fire Mage. Now, Fire Mage has been in a pretty good spot for pretty much the entire expansion already. After they got the rework in Season 2, they have risen to that top spot and haven't let go since. If we take a look in Season 2, we've seen that they were a vital part already of the Exodia comp, pretty much being represented in every key already. Now in Season 3, this trend actually became even bigger, because Fire Mages have become even stronger in this patch with their single target buffs. Especially combining this with their ignite spread damage, this just makes them a huge single target blaster that deals passive AoE over time. Now, the other contributing factor here is that they have a relatively short kick on a ranged cooldown. They have multiple stops available to them in the form of Blast Wave and Dragon Breath. They have huge utility for the group in the form of Mass Barrier, Mass Polymorph. They have Blinks, they have a Cheat Death, they have Ice Cold. They have so much in their toolkit besides the fact that they deal massive amounts of damage. Now, Fire Mage is also getting back to that Season 2 tier set, which will make them even more powerful than they already are. Combining this with the PI from a Shadow Priest and the 5% damage buff that they're getting from the Vengeance Demon Hunter puts them in a perfect spot. Besides that, they're also getting some tuning on their tier set. For their 2 set, we see Charring Embers now increasing the damage taken by 6% instead of 5%, and it lasts an additional 2 seconds. Now, this might not seem like a huge buff to them, but once again, this is just a straight up 20% buff to the 5%, and it will last 2 seconds longer, making them do even more damage than they already do. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about Augmentation Evoker. Augmentation Evoker is in a bit of a weird spot. They have been hugely represented in Season 2, and they have also seen a massive amount of representation in Season 3. The only issue with Augmentation is that it currently doesn't necessarily work too well with all classes. However, Shadow Priest being on a 2-minute and Fire Mage just always having that combust ready makes Augmentation Evoker a very solid option for Season 4 Dragonflight. Their cooldown on their breath aligns perfectly with the PI from the Shadow Priest and that massive amount of burst that they both can put out in that very short period of time in that breath window, scaling very well with the main stat buff that Augmentation provides and the versatility that Augmentation provides. And besides, they have massive amounts of group utility. Now, as a lot of you guys might know, Shadow Priest is not the best in terms of survivability, and this is where Augmentation comes in even more clutch. With their Rescue being able to provide a shield to one of the squishier classes, with their Severe being on a pretty low cooldown, with their cooldown on their kick being so low, having 2 AoE stops, having Landslide, having Sleepwalk, and their Black Attunement just always providing that passive HP increase, having multiple ways of just boosting the defensive abilities of the group, making them insanely strong. Once again, combining this with the Vengeance Demon Hunter, providing that 5% extra magical, gives the Augmentation Evoker even more damage themselves as well, making them an even more solid option for Season 4. Now, all of this combining, I think that we will see a very one-sided meta once again in Season 4. I hope that Blizzard will take early notice of this and tune this accordingly, otherwise there will just not be any room for any other classes in the meta. Now, let me know in the comments down below what you think about how it currently looks for Season 4, if you agree with me, if you would change anything, and as always, see you guys in the next one.